Unbound 2025. What a race that was. Wow, how fast was it? And watching the live coverage for free on YouTube was just fantastic. And Unbound has become the Tour de France for the gravel world in terms of the importance for pro riders, the impact on their careers and the prize money on the line, spectators and viewers of cycle sport, and also for bike manufacturers launching or showing unreleased bike models at this race. It is the shop window for gravel racing anywhere in the world. So in today's video, let's look at the winning bikes of the race, the new unreleased bikes from manufacturers like Pinarello, Factor and Orbea and others, and also talk about some tech trends from the race, such as our mountain bike tyres, a fad and now on the way out, and regular old-fashioned narrow gravel tyres back in. Well, let's dive in and have a closer look. And let's start with the winner of the men's 200-mile race, Cam Jones, aboard a very regular Scott Addict gravel. It's a bike I reviewed here on the channel 2 years ago. Link that review above in case you missed it. So a very lightweight, stiff aero carbon fiber gravel bike with a nice narrow handlebar, 38 centimeters in the hoods. The hood's angled in as well for more aero gains. And his tyres of choice weren't mountain bike tyres, oh no, just a 45mm wide Schwaber G1 RS tyre. So very fast tyre, slick down the middle, tread on the shoulders, the perfect tyre for the fast course of Unbound. And then his gearing choice really stands out with a 52-36 Dura-Ace crankset, so not a compact crankset, but a road race friendly crankset for the high speeds in the race. The average speed was 23 miles an hour, just insane when riding on dirt gravel roads, so hence the big gearing, but with short crank arms, just 160 length crank arms. And then to the women's winner, Carolina Mignon, apologies if I'm mispronouncing that, on a rose back road with a 2.1 inch mountain bike tyre up front and a 45mm tyre on the back. And this mixed tyre size mullet setup with a bigger tyre on the front and a faster rolling narrow tyre on the back is very popular right now. Saw a lot of this at Tracker a few months ago. It partly down to clearance on the fork being more generous than on the frame, and also makes more sense. A bigger tyre for more comfort and control at the front where you need it, and a fast rolling, lighter, narrow tyre on the back for more speed. And then the winner of the men's XL, the 350-mile insane race, was Rob Britton from Lackland Morton aboard a Factor Ostro gravel with a suspension fork, a Fox 32 TC suspension fork. And that's one of the trends we'll talk about in a minute. Definitely a lot of suspension forks being used at Unbound from the coverage and the Instagram I saw over the weekend. Some other pro bikes that stood out and grabbed my attention over the weekend. Keegan Swinson was riding a Santa Cruz Stigmaster with a RockShot Rudy suspension fork with 45mm tyres. He unfortunately crashed in the race. It didn't finish very highly, but interesting he chose a suspension fork for this race. And then Alexei Vermeulen was riding an MV Mog with no suspension, an aero gravel bike, and 45 to 50mm wide gravel tyres. So very regular stock setup, no mountain bike tyres on his bike. And then the winner of the recent Gradic, Peter Vakok, mispronouncing his name I know, actually chose, rather than the Grail he raced in Scotland, he chose the Grizzle from Canyon's lineup because it has space for bigger tyres. And he ran 50mm wide tyres, and presumably given the sort of worries about mud, the peanut butter mud in the days leading up to the race and the recon videos that did the rounds on social media, he was worried or concerned about the tyre clearance on the Grail not being sufficient with the big tyres he was running, because we know clearance on the Grail is limited. 42 officially, 45 fit, but you are minimising tyre clearance. But to make this bike, which isn't a very racy carbon gravel bike, racier, he fitted Canyon's aero gravel handlebar to the bike. So yeah, interesting setup choices on this one. Interesting he chose this bike and not a new Grail with a DT Swiss suspension fork. So some very fast, very interesting looking winning bikes. And given how many amateurs look to pros for inspiration for bike choices and equipment choices, how much will these winning bikes influence your choice when it comes to buying and speccing your gravel bike? Let me know by dropping a comment down below. So those are the winning bikes. Also lots of new unreleased bikes being shown at the race as well, because like I say, it's a Tour de France of the gravel world. Right, new bikes, and starting with what appears to be a brand new Specialized Diverge in an amazing red and yellow colourway. Looks mint, I'm happy by that, looks fantastic. The main change on the Diverge is a dropout. It's now UDH, so the new SRAM Explore group set can be used. A rolling update, the same as we saw on the Crux last year. The rest of the bike looks the same to my eyes. There's speculation around tyre clearance being bigger and it being more airy, but I can't really see that. Most bikes I saw had a 50mm tracer tyre on, and given the current Diverge has space for 47s, tyre clearance to me looks about the same. The same future shock, the same external routing. Pros had an aero handlebar, but yeah, it looks pretty much the same. There are now 3 mounts on the fork instead of 2. Is there more clearance at the fork? Remains to be seen. But what's interesting for me is how I've seen personally the Crux have become the gravel bike that people choose from the Specialized range. At the recent Gralic in Scotland, the Crux was the most popular bike bar none. And the Diverge is a fantastic bike, but it's heavier and more complex and a higher stack than the Crux. So I'm kind of surprised to see rise on the Diverge, and I'm still surprised there's no essentially tarmac gravel bike. And really interesting to see that Specialized have shown no interest yet, that we can tell, from doing an aero gravel bike, because my goodness me, all the other bike manufacturers are chasing the aero gravel thing. The big trend this year was really aerodynamics and wide tyres. Basically, an aero road bike with space with fat tyres is the main trend. And talking of aero gravel, Villiers appear to have a new bike in the pipeline, likely a replacement, I'd imagine, for their Rave SLR, which hasn't been that popular in the UK at least. So clearly working on a replacement, and it looks racy as heck. A massive deep head tube, drop rear stays, and a really interesting sort of wide, narrow down tube like we've seen on a 3T Explorer in the past. And the bike was being raced by Ivor Slick, and his setup was very aggressive. A long negative right stem, an angled down saddle, and the bike was running 50mm wide tyres. And the other Italian brand, Pinarello, also have a new bike in the pipeline, likely an update on the Gravel F. Again, not the most popular gravel bike in the world. It's been through 2 iterations right now, and appears iteration 3 is in the pipeline. And it still looks unmistakably a Pinarello. Even in this cool camo paint finish, it looks like a Pinarello. The wavy fork, all the curvy tube profiles, very distinctive indeed. Maybe toned down a bit, but not that much. And quite an interesting sort of kinked angled rear stays, presumably for creating more comfort, more compliance at the back end, try and allow that back end to flex a bit more with that arrangement of seat stay design. Remains to be seen what the tyre clearance is on the bike. The current model is 50mm. You'd hope they go bigger than 50 to meet the current trend for mountain bike tyres, so 54, 57, but I can't tell from the photos shared online. And the other bike manufacturer launching, or showing a new bike, should I say, is Orbea, with an update to what is probably their Terra, which again has been through 2 or 3 iterations and have a new bike in the pipeline. As with most bikes shown at Unbound, it's more aero looking at least than the old bike. Deeper tubes, really interesting dropped rear stays, and one interesting detail is a stepped seat tube design. So the bottom half is really skinny, but above the seat stays is much wider. So could they copy Specialized with the Roubaix and have a bigger seat tube diameter to allow the seat post to flex in that bigger diameter and create a bit more comfort in the bike? So more comfort as well as more aero. And tyre clearance, well, I can't tell from the photos, but presumably wider than the current bike. A fact that had not 1, but 2 new bikes on display. One being ridden by David Miller. That looks like a sort of a Crux update really, a lightweight, simple tube profile, internal routing, described as quite a versatile gravel bike for racing and adventure riding, and it does look really good. Like I say, sort of like a modern version of a Crux. It's Specialized made a modern Crux with internal routing. So it looks lightweight, it looks really interesting, but the more interesting of the 2 factor bikes was the one with a suspension fork. This one does look like a Cannondale Topstone clone to me. Clearly designed around a suspension fork with a very small head tube to offset the increased axle to crown measurement of a suspension fork, which is longer than a rigid carbon fork. presumably a steeper head angle as well to maintain good geometry with the suspension fork, and really interesting rear triangle design, presumably to encourage more flex, and quite an interesting seat tube design. So clearly, like the top stone from Cannondale, that whole back end designed to increase the amount the rear axle can flex and bend the whole back half of the frame with the way they've shaped the tubes and the profiles. So yeah, quite interesting looking bike. And of course it's aero everywhere as well, because Factor is known for aero road race bikes and is naturally an aero bike. Also has down tube storage, which is becoming very common on gravel bikes. And tire clearance, well, it looks like space of 45, probably would take a 50 easily, but can't tell what the tire clearance is without getting the calipers on the bike. And interesting, that Factor is showing 2 gravel bikes and likely replacements for their 2 current gravel bikes. Maybe they have the LS, their all-road first generation gravel bike, and then they have the Ostro Gravel, which Rob Britton was riding. So are these 2 replacements for those 2 models? Most likely, probably. So yeah, lots to talk about from Factor in the near future. Hopefully can't wait to find out more about those very, very soon. And then actually launching a new bike at Unbound, but shown at Sea Otter for the first time on Ventum, with an update to the GS1. And the main change to the GS1 over the old model is basically it's more aero and more racy, with a new head tube design to be more aero, a new fork, does away with the bike packing mounts, and tyre clearance is now 55 at the front with that new fork and 50 out back. Whether that's enough, because the bike I saw at Sea Otter had very minimal tyre clearance with a mountain bike tyre on it. So has Ventum done enough to update this model to meet the needs and demands and desires of people wanting to fit 50, 55, 60mm wide tyres in a bike like this and still have the aero benefits of a bike like this? Remains to be seen. So yeah, quite interesting update to GS1 from Ventum. Now, a quick word on some of the tech trends at Unbound. Always interesting to see what pros and regular people use at this race. And we've seen the trend in recent years in terms of tyres go bigger and bigger, and mountain bike tyres become very, very popular indeed. The other big trend is aerodynamics. Aero is everywhere. It's basically a road race on dirt gravel now, with the aero bikes, the aero handlebars, narrow handlebars, skin suits, aero socks, a full jazz. Hydration packs. Everybody is using hydration packs with water bottles. That's a trend that's become very popular as well, to minimise stoppage at the feed checkpoint, so people just ride straight through, get a new hydration pack and carry on riding. But from watching the race and following social media over the weekend, it appears that the mountain bike trend isn't as strong at Unbound as it is at other races like Tracker. Lots more riders on 45s and 50s, and given how smooth, I'm talking from somebody watching the race on YouTube, how smooth, relatively speaking, the gravel looks in Unbound, it makes sense that a 45 semi-slick tyre is the ideal tyre for those parkours. But quite a few riders, well, mountain bike tyres of course, quite a few riders go in mixed sizes, so a bigger tyre at the front or a mountain bike tyre on the front where the fork has bigger clearance, and a 45 or 50 slick on the back, and lots more of these as well. Suspension forks, I saw a lot more of these on show in the race and on social media. The men's XL winner was on this very fork, a Rockshot Rudy, launched over 3 years ago now, probably due an update. So a lot more suspension forks. Is it the year of suspension forks? Is 2025, 2026 the time when suspension forks will become a lot more important and enter the conversation in a bigger way than we've seen in the last few years, or just a blip? And given the trend for bigger tyres, mountain bike tyres, and one of the reasons is for more comfort and control, a suspension fork is the natural evolution in that sort of development of gravel bikes to meet the demands of racing and tough courses. So might we see a swing back from mountain bike tyres to narrower gravel tyres with suspension forks? Well, on the evidence of Unbound, perhaps, but yeah, remains to be seen. So let me know your thoughts on the trends, what other trends stood out for you. But of course, these trends are particular to the demands of Unbound, which are different to the demands of Tracker and Gralic and other races around the world. But what tech trends stood out for you? What caught your eye over the weekend? Let me know by dropping a comment down below. So some really interesting new unreleased and winning bikes from Unbound, but I'll leave you with this, my favourite bike from the race, which for me is, it sums up the spirit of gravel. Just a crazy looking bike, a lot of fun, don't take too seriously, a Lauf with the Lauf suspension fork and a disc rear wheel. Yeah, it looks absolutely barnstormingly crazy. So that for me was a star bike from the race. But let me know which bike from this video or other bikes at the race were your star bikes. Leave a comment down below. And if you raced Unbound, if you took part in Unbound, I'd love to hear from you. How did your race go? Drop a comment down below. And if you want to see a video of the best gravel bikes available right now, make sure to watch the video right here.